all know a guy who only occasionally shaves for big occasions, and it's because that occasional shave really hurts. It's the time of year for big occasions, and yet there he is, suffering with that cheap drugstore razor. Let's help him out. Henson Shaving's line of razors, built with aerospace precision, deliver a smooth shave your dad, brother, and even son can enjoy, eventually. With replacement blades just 10 cents each, you'll buy it once and they'll use it for life. How's that for the perfect gift? Celebrate with 100 free blades on your first purchase, and no subscription headaches. HensonShaving.com/holiday.
Capture the spirit of the holidays like never before with Rockbrook Camera, Nebraska and Western Iowa's premier camera store since 1975. Rockbrook Camera has the latest cameras and lenses, so you can preserve precious memories and learn new photography skills that will last a lifetime. Let the knowledgeable photography pros at Rockbrook Camera show you how to take great pictures of family traditions, the kids' sporting events, and the kids' big holiday musical. Rockbrook Camera is always ready to help with amazing customer support. Join one of their photo classes to learn the best tips and order a beautiful, custom-made gift from their photo lab. Capture the beauty and majesty of winter's snowy landscapes. Be prepared for holiday gatherings and be ready to capture all the family fun. Visit Rockbrook Camera today, 1 block south of 168th and West Center in Omaha, 70th and Pioneers in Lincoln, or online at rockbrookcamera.com. Rockbrook Camera. Great photography begins here.
Welcome to the No Fruit Podcast,
where we talk about our life experiences with a spiritual twist. Hosted by Maurice
and Kafa. We hope you enjoy today's episode.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Positive Energy T-Shirt Shop. It is the Positive Energy T-Shirt Shop. www.positivenrgshop.com. And if you would love to support the channel, be sure to buy one of our T-shirts off of there and just continue to support us as we move forward. Now, today, I thank y'all very much for tuning in. And we love y'all a whole lot. In this particular episode, I know the last pew was a little wild, but this one's a little more serious today. And, I had read an article. It's called let me just get it correct. We, the People of the AME Church. And it is published by the official organ of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. It's called the Christian Recorder. And the editor of that newspaper, Mr. John Thomas III, he had written an article, and it talks about the people of the AME Church and how people are not filling their seats. Overall, that's what it's coming down to in a nutshell, right? Not filling the seats, people not feeling like they're being heard, understanding what's really going on. When you take a look at hierarchy as far as an organizational pyramid, if you will, some people like the top down, and then some people understand that they're, especially when it comes to church, it's really from the bottom up in most cases. But because of how the structure really is, it looks like it's from the top down. But one of the things that I really want to talk about, and again, I challenge you, it's the christianrecorder.com. I challenge you to read this article and let's talk about it, right? But there is something that he references. It's called Faith Among Black Americans. It was an article written by the Pew Research, and it found that the most important factor in church affiliation is the quality of a sermon across all age groups, right? And and that kind of dictates them staying or leaving or whatever else. But one of the things that when I read, and this is what John Thomas references in his article, right? But one of the things that really stood out for me in this particular article, Faith Among Black Americans, he really digs deep into Black Americans going to predominantly black churches and as to why they may or may not go to other churches, and it being those that are stuck in their place, if you will, being the silent generation, the baby boomers, what's them being a part of it. It's funny how he doesn't really mention the Gen Xers, but he goes right into millennials and the Gen Zers, if you will.
Again, this is the article written in the Pew Forum. So this has multiple authors for that one. So again, it's different than the article that Maurice is referencing that's on the AME website, the Christian Recorder. This one is written by the pewforum.org. Again, Faith Among Black Americans. The article is dated February 16th, 2021. So it's something that's recent. And what the Pew Foundation basically did, the Pew Research Center did, they interviewed and surveyed over 8,000 Black adults over the age of 18. And they gave them a questionnaire that was designed just about their religious experiences. And asked them, like, are you currently worshiping, and what are your reasons for worshiping, and who do you worship with? So it was gathering that type of information. And as Maurice is alluding to, that this article is filled with so many, it's factual because they interviewed and surveyed 8,000 people. Again, I'm sure there's more than 8,000 Blacks
definitely
in the United States of America. But again, this pool that they did get, it's very interesting, the feedback that this research group obtained, and it tells us a lot about the growth of the church and how the church can grow if individuals don't value church, for one. They don't value going to church with other Blacks, that they prefer to be in a multicultural atmosphere. It lends itself a lot to the tradition of the Black church. So if the Gen Zs and the millennials are not connected, and I think we've heard this in other ways, that they're not connected to slavery. They're not connected to civil rights movement because it's so long ago. Their parents didn't go through it. Their grandparents probably didn't have that experience firsthand. So they're so removed from it. So to sit in church and listen to some of the Negro spirituals, they're not moved by that. That's not what's pushing them and moving them.
No.
They are more drawn to what they've experienced in life.
And
so for me, I think, in Maurice and I, we've talked about this before, that we grew up in schools where it was predominantly one culture, our own. Our teachers were that. Our classmates were that. Where our kids who were born, not too long ago, they had interracial students. They had other cultures that they experienced in school. Everyone was not of their culture. Now, they were predominantly Black, but even so, our neighborhood that they grew up in was not predominantly Black. So even if in the classroom, the majority may have been Black, but all of their teachers were not, and definitely all of our neighbors were not. So they were able to see others, and I think that created a different type of comfortability with them. So they may feel more comfortable around people who are,
I don't know. I don't know. It's a few things that you touched on that I would like to really hit.
Go ahead.
But I don't know if they feel more comfortable as much as that's just their norm.
Right.
You get what I mean? So I don't want to say put that out there that they're comfortable with talking. They're comfortable in talking to anyone that doesn't always look like them, because they've been around people that don't look like them, right? And ultimately, in a situation like these, you're talking about the silent generation, right? And so the silent generation, as you said, they were in what was their community, and what did their community look like? right? So if their community, let's say a 10-block radius, right? So in that 10-block radius, what the government put them in was all the black people need to be in this spot for the most part, right? And then as you get through the baby boomers, and then all those things start to, all those lines, red lines, if you will, they're starting to get pushed and pushed and pushed, moved and moved and moved. And then until today, where some of those things are not as, they're there, but they're a little more invisible, if you will.
And just for clarification, the silent generation are those who were born before 1946.
You know, so when I take a look at my, you know, I have my grandmother who's still alive, you know, thank God. Kafa's grandmother, she's still alive, thank God. We have great, you know, aunts and, you know, whatnot that are still alive that were born before 1946 that can talk to us about what life was like then, you know, and more especially, you know, our just so happened, Kafa and I grandmothers, maternal grandmothers were born in South Carolina, even though hers didn't stay. I don't know if your grandmother stayed as long as mine did. Mine moved in like 14.
My grandmother was gone when she was 7.
Okay. You know, so my grandmother, she relocated up here because her parents had passed away in a terrible tornado down there, and in 1944. So what happened is that she was down there for a little while longer with her grandmother, and then she ended up moving up here with her aunt, her mother's sister. So hearing some of the stories about being down there and that community, looking at what the churches look like, looking at their church house and their schoolhouse was the same house, if you will. You know, so having that sense of community, everything was right there in that space. And so you almost had no choice but to have a black senior clergy, because that's what something else they talk about. You know, more than likely, where you have majority black churches, you know, the senior clergy, the officers, everybody, you know, are normally black. They look like you. But you think about it from that point on, at that time, they were only allowing certain blacks to read and then even preach, if you will. So I think that's where the silent generation, they were still part of that, as you talked about, Kaf, that slavery space, right? And then and as I said, you know, you start to diminish some of that as you move on.
As you move on and people become more educated and...
I want to say educated as much as the some of the... I mean, I agree with education. I'm not saying that that's wrong. Hopefully I didn't say that. But I think it comes down to, once you start going through some of the civil rights actions, if you will, and understanding what was being put out there, like the suburbs were the place to go. So ultimately, we were looking to integrate neighborhoods. We were looking to integrate schools, colleges, universities, all those type of things. I think because we were doing that, you know, ultimately the church, we should have expected for the church to start to falter. Because even if you look now, I don't know how many churches there really are where they are still the hub of a community that's all black. I'm in Philly, so and I'm not saying that there aren't any at all, but I'm really curious as to how many churches are literally smack dab in a black community. And I'm gonna give y'all an example. I'm gonna talk about one that's in the suburbs. So one of my clients who's actually serves in Devon, Pennsylvania, and it's interesting, her church that she pastors is literally in the middle of these $1 million homes where no black people live. So you wonder, when they built that church, what was that community like? And what happened? So her church is not growing because she has no one to pull on to grow the church.
Right.
You get what I mean? You know, so she's not getting...
And especially with the name of the church. Again, it's different, African Methodist Episcopal Church.
Right,
So,
Mount Zion.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Mount Zion. So if you're around predominantly white neighborhood, and as Maurice is saying, $1 million homes, those people who are buying the homes, those people who are going to school in that area, may not be interested in attending an African Methodist Episcopal Church.
More especially when you start to learn about the history of that community, where they had a major racial situation. I don't know if a school burned down or a library or something. There was something major in that area. Mm-hmm. And so you just wonder, how was everybody pushed? You get what I mean?
Right.
So...
And you wonder, historically, what made that little church become? Was it because all of those big mansions had enslaved people or had servants, and that was a worship place for the servants to go? Or was it that was once farmland or owned by black people, Africans, if you will, African Americans, whatever you want to call them, and then they were pushed out, and then, the whites moved in and built larger homes. So it does make you want to think, even when you look at all these little small churches that are in the suburbs, did it come about because the AME missionaries were going around and like, hey, you group of people should get together and worship together and not have to worship individually or whatever, that you can come together as a group, and we'll help you build this missionary church in this area. I don't know.
Right. I mean, in some of these churches, we can get some of the history and all that type of stuff, but here is what I believe these articles are really referring to. And some of it is, even though the one that's on the Christian Recorder, when they referenced this, they talked about the preaching and the lack of preaching reaching all ages. But I would like to say that these Gen Zers, millennials and Gen Zers, are not as sold on the historical piece of the church.
They don't have, like I said earlier, they don't have that connection. Again,
Go ahead.
The article from the Pew Research, they define the Gen Zers as people born between 97 and 2002.
Right.
Millennials are those born between 1981 and 1996. Just when they did their poll, how they classified those individuals, just so we are aware. So those who are born after 81, like, things had changed.
Right.
Again, just that disconnect from that struggle. I mean, 81, computers were like becoming a big thing. So information was out there for them. It didn't need to, as we've talked before on the podcast, we didn't have to go to the church house to get information. And
that's why, because, again, that church house was the hub of the community.
Of the community, yes.
And
if you needed anything, that's
right.
where you went. If you needed a job, if you needed somebody to watch your kids, if you needed, information about where to move to, whatever it was, if you needed a lawyer or a doctor, you went to the church, and somebody within the church could tell you, oh yeah, go see, Brother Brown. He can help you out. So
right.
I don't think that church house provides that, especially not for the Gen Zers. Definitely not for the millennials. They're not running to the church house to get that information or even give that information to say that, hey, come see me.
And so one other thing that they talk about in this pewforum.org article, when asked to assess the influence of predominantly black churches in their communities, nearly half of black adults, 47%, say that black churches are less influential today than they were 50 years ago. And
that's big.
3 in 10 say they are more influential, and about 1 in 5 say they hold the same amount of sway. So here's the thing. I would say the church is not influential. Overall.
We talked about that too, when it came to politics. And,
right. Well, I would say it comes down to, when it comes to politics, it all depends on what politician is actually reaching out to that church and feels that they need those votes.
But I'm just saying the church is not running out to do anything. So,
no.
Later on in the article, it talks about all of the Black Lives Matter movement. You don't see and don't hear very often of the churches being on the forefront and speaking. You don't see them on the Sunday news saying, hey, I'm representing ABC Church and this is what we stand for, or anything like that. I just think it's kind of gray in some areas because the values are a little bit different. Well,
I mean, if we're going to talk about influence in the Black community, I mean, I can only speak for myself and my own experiences and what I've heard. So growing up in school, when we talked about, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Mm-hmm. You get what I mean? And, it became, oh, I want to be a police officer. Oh, I want to be a firefighter. I want to, be a doctor. Like, it's all those things. And then all of a sudden, what happens? You get the Cosby Show. Mm-hmm. You get what I mean? And granted, there are some other examples out there, but I'm just going to use that one particular example. You had, so now all of a sudden you have not only a doctor but a lawyer, right? And so now all of a sudden these are your role models, and even in this particular show, I do not recall not one time them referencing a church.
I think they had one show, yeah.
I'm not saying they haven't. Mm-hmm. I just don't recall.
Right.
And then you turn around and then you go to A Different World, right? The show afterwards. And then with A Different World, I believe Jaleesa had a church background. I believe. I could be wrong. It seemed like somebody had a church background, but even with that, you didn't see, no one talked about church stuff. Really. Not really. And I think that's what helped to sway or helped to influence where things had gone. Mm-hmm. And then you have commercials that talks about Michael Jordan and him flying, and so when it comes down to marketing, once everybody had the what they call it, the boob tube, if you want, what do they call it, the TV?
The TV.
No. They called it something else. But when you start thinking about that, and when it came down to marketing, the church did not embrace that. And so that's why the church, I think, is so far behind now. And then unfortunately, those individuals that have these mega churches, I don't see mega churches where they are predominantly, I mean, no, I guess there are some there are predominantly Black, but but when you listen to what they have going on, it's never anything positive about the pastor or whatever else. And I think we lose that they're people also. Mm-hmm. You get what I mean? So I think there's a whole lot that's to unpack with this.
Yeah, it is.
These articles. I mean, we just brought out 3 different ideas and topics or whatever else. And as many churches as there are, let's be honest, how many of them are actually have more than 10 people in it? And that's the way it feels. I'm pretty sure y'all could tell me, oh, my church got more than 10. Yeah, okay, but that's one out of how many? To be honest. And more especially now that we are in this virtual space where everybody's doing the Zoom or Facebook or YouTube stuff, yeah, it's not the same. So how do you bring people back, if you will? What needs to happen in order for the church as a whole to be that go-to place? And I think that's a very hard, but also a very delicate situation.
It is. And if it can't be the go-to place, like, how does it become important again for people, for adults? Because I question and what happens to the next generation if they're not church goers and they don't bring their children up in church. Then what happens?
I think that's a very easy question. I mean, you already have some churches closing now.
Yeah.
You get what I mean? And if I don't have to, let's be honest. Let's be 100% honest. If I don't have to walk into your building and I don't have to give you offering, why would I go? Especially if that's what I feel like that's all you're worried about anyway is my offering. And you're not giving anything back to me, and I feel as though that I need to eat. I don't have anything on my table. All these benefits that the government has been giving out they're drying up right now. So guess what? I need to keep my little $15 because, we go into the market and Kafka could attest, seeing little 8 wings for $15. I mean, some of y'all could see the same thing. $15 for 8 chicken wings. So how in the world are you supposed to feed a family of 5, of 4, of 3, whatever it is? How are you supposed to feed people off of that? And people are not looking at, hey, tithe is a faith walk, all that type of stuff. People, that's not what they're looking at.
And maybe, that is the part that almost recession-like that will put us back in place and in line with God, that we'll have to lean on him and go to him and go to the church for support because chicken wings cost so much. So, I don't know.
I don't know either.
Something to think about.
Oh, yeah, there's a whole lot to think about, y'all. And I would love to hear what y'all got to say. Like I said, I know some of you will say, I have more than 10 members in my church.
But I guess what Maurice is getting across the board, out of every church house that there is, if we had to take all the people who are going to church and divide that by the number of churches, how many people would there be on average in each church house? I
mean, so some of you who knows that I do have a website and graphic design organization. I'm a small business consultant for those services. And how many churches that I deal with? And I can't tell you how, out of all the churches, over 100 plus churches that I deal with, how many of them actually have, or the pastors actually talk about them having more than 10 members. So, I'm sorry, more than 10 members that attend. They might have 1,000 on roll, but it could be 27 at a 10.
And I think that's what the article from the Christian Recorder was talking about.
Right.
That, as we go to these meetings and we hype each other up, we're like, oh, yeah, I have, X number of people on roll. But X number of people don't even come. So how can you count for them?
Right.
You know what I mean? Are you reaching out to them? We've talked about this before. Like, where are your class leaders? Are you reaching out to these people that you say are your members?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how many other organizations are out there that would consider you a member and you don't attend anything.
There's very little.
Not Girl Scouts,
right.
Not any sorority or fraternity,
right.
Not any club or organization. I don't know how many organizations will allow you to and continue to call you a member,
right,
and keep you on their roll as a member if you don't show up. Like, that's part of your membership. You showing up. And if you're not going to show up, then you're going to pay.
Right.
When we were members of the YMCA, like, we had to pay whether we went there or not. When we were members of, I don't know, some ABC fitness club, I mean, we went for 2 months and then we couldn't get out the contract because we signed up as a member for a year.
Right.
You know, that was what it was. You're a member.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if you come or not.
Right.
We're going to continue to take this money out your, account every single month.
Right.
And as long as you pay, you're considered a member.
Right.
So, and I'm not trying to say do that for churches. Y'all don't get me started on that. But I think there should be some value to that word membership. And I think we use it so loosely that it gets in the way. You can have people who,
So then that, again, that lends itself to that financial piece.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I mean? And if religion is free, if you will, then why should I pay for a membership at this church? I mean, I think that would be, I'm just playing the other side of that.
Right.
But here's the thing. I totally agree to some degree about the cost or some type of, see, I think if people did not talk about tithing and going above and beyond so often, people would not have a negative outlook on that.
Right.
But if you don't ask, you shall not receive.
But again, if you get into the word, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to tithe. So again, can I tithe and not be a member?
Oh, most definitely. Because
right. So I think, should those two be separate? And again, we get into a whole nother podcast.
Because that's us. We're not in that space of if I'm coming to visit you, you might be getting my tithe that Sunday.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had a coworker who didn't actively go to church, but she tithed to local organizations. So sometimes it might be her local Catholic church.
Right.
Sometimes it might be the world, animal shelters.
Mm-hmm.
Another time it might be for a mental health agency.
Mm-hmm.
But every month she gave out of her, savings and not savings, but,
right.
out of her income, she would give a monthly gift, and she would get frustrated because he continued to get letters and emails.
Yeah. I mean,
but again, that's the way that's what God put on her heart.
Right. Right.
To do things that way. Is it helping the storehouse of God? Hey, the money she was given could be helping somebody.
It can be. I mean, we don't know exactly.
Right.
But we really want to know what y'all got to think. I mean, what y'all have to say, what y'all thinking on this, because it's a lot, and we can go on this all day, for real. I mean, for those of you who knows how our little crew used to get down, we could talk about this type of stuff until 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, and we could start off at 2 o'clock in the afternoon because everyone looks at it differently.
Mm-hmm. And we all have different experiences.
Right.
So we call out all those people who, we used to hang out with us and when we have our little after church debates.
Right.
Come on and talk to us now. Join on in. Hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Call Maurice. He'll talk to you.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? If you're interested in joining us on the podcast and being a guest and talking about this even more, let us know. We love to bring you on as a guest.
Most definitely.
Hey, Kafa, what do we want them to do?
Maurice, we want everyone to stay fit with Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Follow, share, comment, and subscribe to the No Fruit Podcast.
Continue to listen to us on your favorite podcast channels.
And look for new episodes every Thursday.
We thank y'all very much for listening to us.
May God bless you all.
Peace.
We all know a guy who only occasionally shaves for big occasions, and it's because that occasional shave really hurts. It's the time of year for big occasions, and yet there he is, suffering with that cheap drugstore razor. Let's help him out. Henson Shaving's line of razors, built with aerospace precision, deliver a smooth shave your dad, brother, and even son can enjoy, eventually. With replacement blades just 10 cents each, you'll buy it once and they'll use it for life. How's that for the perfect gift? Celebrate with 100 free blades on your first purchase, and no subscription headaches. HensonShaving.com/holiday.
The holidays start here at Baker's with a variety of options to celebrate traditions old and new. You could do a classic herb-roasted turkey or spice it up and make turkey tacos. Serve up a go-to shrimp cocktail or use Simple Truth wild-caught shrimp for your first Cajun risotto. Make creamy mac and cheese or a spinach artichoke fondue from our selection of Murray's cheese. No matter how you shop, Baker's has all the freshest ingredients to embrace all your holiday traditions. Baker's, fresh for everyone.